Are you trying to dominate your fantasy football league? Do you want so many championship rings it's impossible to sign autographs? Well, crack open a beer, pour yourself a glass of bourbon, and settle in, because you've come to the right place. Welcome to Hammercast.
Welcome to the Double D's podcast, which is part of the Hammercast network. I am your host, Kevin Coleman, and on this episode, we have special guest Nick Whalen, who has pretty much done it all in this space, in football space. And to me, you know, he's a former college football coach. He's currently a high school football coach in Wisconsin. There is no one I'd rather talk about quarterback prospects than with him. He's someone that I definitely admired his work and in this space for the last year that I've really been involved in all this, and even longer when I was just like some weird guy with no photo on Twitter. Nick, thank you for coming on. And why don't you tell our listeners about your work and a little bit about your background and kind of where you come from?
Oh, cool, man. Thanks for all of that. I don't know if I've earned all that, but I'm from Wisconsin. My big football background would be I'm actually, playing wise, I'm a late developer. So like I tore up my knee. I was always a small guy. I got hurt, and then I didn't really play varsity football at all, which is surprising to people because what I did then is when I went to college, I ended up volunteering. And so I went to a small college called Carthage College. I volunteered there in, let's see, how old am I here? In 2004. And then 2005 through spring 2007, I was at Western Kentucky. That was my biggest learning block, I would say. So, we had some big games. We played Georgia and Auburn, and I'm not like calling plays or anything, but I'm there. I'm charting, I'm scouting, I'm helping recruit. And it was a really big, I guess, initiation of what big time football is like, and learning how to build your play calling even for a spring and then for fall. And, it was really cool. I had a small internship at Drake, and then that coach went to Montana State. So I went out there in, that would be the spring of 2008, I believe, or 9. And then I had a few interviews and got out of college football. And then I started doing high school ball. So I bounced around to, probably 5 or 6 different high schools at this point. And I'm coaching now. So that's the coaching wise. And then in terms of writing and doing all this kind of stuff, I didn't really ever think about it until Ryan McDowell actually approached me a long time ago. Ryan's a friend. And he's like, "Hey, would you want to come write a DLF?" And I'm like, I didn't even know what DLF was at the time. There's no offense to anybody. I just don't really pay attention to it. I just do all my own work. And I was like, sure. And so I wrote something and they liked it and kind of went from there. And then in terms of writing, I started the first Devy report, or the first Devy publication. That would have been 7 years ago. And then I did that for 6 years. I didn't do that this year. And then I started doing a rookie report I would call the graduates the last 3 years. And then we here are today.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's awesome that you got to do that for your background there. I'm just a small town. I played junior college ball for one game, and then I broke my ankle and I was done. I was small. I didn't have the rehabilitation, but I love how you talk about play calling. I coached a freshman boys football team, and I was in charge of play calling when I was student teaching. And I didn't realize how much that is just hard. Like play calling is that's why when I always see these Twitter people making fun of play calling and saying, "Hey, I could do a better job," I always kind of laugh a little bit. You probably do too, right? Because I'm always like, yeah, I could barely play call a freshman boys game. So I'm staying out of this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a true art form. Actually, I have, and that's the other part too, is, as many years, this is my 12th year coaching football. Mm-hmm. I'm still always learning, because you always need to learn or you're going to fall behind. And I have some books out there. I have one it's like R4. I think it's about passing concepts. I want to read that one. I got Bill Walsh, which is like one of the best coaching books out there. I need to finish that one. Then my other one it's like the background of like everything you need to do to be an offensive coordinator. So I've already been a coordinator and I've been in football this much, but I'm still going to read more on it because it's so complex. You're building plays on other plays. You're trying to keep concepts simple, but yet things to confuse the defense. So you're shifting or trading or motioning. And then even within the game, you got to get enough information from other coaches and players to figure out matchups or what they're going to do in their play calls and counter them within a game. And that's the other part too, is like, they'll say, hey, this guy had a bad game, but the coordinator or coaches can have a bad game. There's been really bad plays that I've called like, that was a really bad call. I didn't have the right personnel in, and it wasn't that successful. And that makes me feel bad, but there's also some play calls I'm like, okay, I got him there, so yeah, it's truly an art form.
And as a coach, I coach varsity basketball now because my wife made me choose, and I chose basketball. Once we had kids, my wife said, you got to pick. So I picked basketball.
It's a long season, man.
It is a long season too. I may have made the wrong choice, to be honest, but I love the basketball part of it. I will say though, I always remember this as a coach. Do you remember the great plays or the bad plays? Because I always remember the ones that I screwed up on. I have PTSD in the middle of the night sometimes from like plays that I called or bad defenses, sets, principles, offensive sets. Those are the ones that stick with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's the same. I mean, when I think of certain players, I think of the great plays that they made or our relationships, which I think is the big part of sports that we like. But in terms of games, I always think about things that I overdid, which as a coordinator, it might be I put in too much install that week. I tried to, like here's one example. We had this game. It was a really muddy game, and I had a left-handed quarterback, and I put in this concept where, I was concept-based passing. And so when we were 2x2 set, I would have a concept on this side and a concept on this side. So like this might be a quick read and this might be a longer read. So that way he can go from here back to here if, this one isn't open. And so I put that in thinking he could handle it. And it was wet and muddy. And I think there was too much going on where that wasn't good. And he was too late coming back over here, and they pick sixed it, and we lost by like 14. And I'm like, man, if I just simplified it that week, because we already had the conditions, and, those things. And that's, Kevin, that's 2 years ago, and that's still in here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. Trust me. I go through that every day. I'm just sorry. I'll be working. Yesterday, I was working on the fence in my backyard, and I'm thinking, man, why did I call that set against that one team in December? And I'm just like, what is happening in my life right now? My wife just looks at me like I'm crazy, but I'm really not crazy. I'm just a coach. Well, that's kind of how these go.
Let me tell you this though. So there was a stretch of about 3 years where I didn't coach, and I was driving to work one day. And it came to me, and and we're not going to talk about it in this space because it's going to be way too long to talk about, but this entire new offensive system and concept came to me. And I was driving, and it was just like an epiphany. I was like, oh. And then, I get to work, and I like write it all down quick before work starts. And then I met with my buddy who's a defensive coordinator over the weekend. I said, hey, so what do you think about this? It's like, ooh, this could be really tough, So I'm not even coaching.
Yeah.
And it's either in there or it's not. That's basically it.
Yeah. No, hey, that's people that don't coach, you kind of want to understand how crazy we all are. We are just crazy. We see things on that. I can watch a middle school girls game and take a play or set or something from them, and I will use it too. So like we're always adapting and changing. How is your football season going right now? I know the pandemic has kind of changed things, and you guys have been playing. You're in full swing. You're busy. How's it going?
Yeah. So we just lost our first game, so we're 2-1. There's no playoffs. There's only a 5-game season. Our next two opponents, they're going to be more passing based. So what I do right now, my role is I was coordinator 2 years ago. I gave that up to I had a full-time gig part-time gig in the fantasy industry that I took. I'm like, I can't do it all. So now I'm there. I'm doing quarterbacks, passing game, DBs. So I'm excited because we're going to face two really heavy passing teams, and I'm ready to kind of unleash some new things with my DBs and let them have some fun. So yeah, we're 2-1. We just lost on Friday. It was 23-9 or something like that, but it probably wasn't even that close. We just didn't play a great game, and there's things within that game that I didn't do well, and those are the things that I'm going to focus on.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's why, I was glad to bring on Nick, because he has his background in football, but also he can look at these prospects, and quarterback prospects are the toughest. So they are really hard to really break down and go through. And now he's a quarterbacks coach. He's an offensive guy. He's a former college coach. So we're going to break down the rookie class. That's kind of what we're looking at, the 2021 rookie quarterback breakdown. But before we do that, I do want to go over his evaluation process, because I think it changes for everybody. I know you're a big film guy, because I know with Dynasty Nerds, and I think it's is it Jared, one of the Dynasty Nerds guys. You guys do it all the time. And I know that. What do you? So when you're looking at it, let's start with the easy one. How do you factor in like a quarterback's height, weight, age, hand size, measurables in your process?
A lot of that stuff honestly doesn't really matter that much to me.
Okay.
So in terms of evaluating, those things would only matter to me if I think it's a detriment to their game. And so, like let's say hand size. Hand size would be a factor if they're fumbling a lot. And so you can see that even within certain conditions. Are they fumbling a lot? Are things slipping? And if it's not, I really don't care a lot. Now, would I love every quarterback to have huge hands? Yes, but that's not always going to be the case. Height's different because height you can be tall and have a low arm angle. You can also be short and have a high arm angle. But if you can navigate and find lanes to throw, or based on how quick your release is or your decision making, sometimes that won't matter. So I only factor those in if it's really a detriment to their game.
Okay, no, that's fair. I think that, and I think with height, sometimes we look at different things. But Kyler Murray, the new version of what a QB could be, is way different than what we like 10 years ago, right? When you and me were younger back in the day, you had to be 6'4", 220. That's kind of that mindset. Now it's a little bit of a different. Do you care about college production when you evaluate college quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, a lot of these are I guess, would be tiebreakers for me. So the college production, the preference would be multiple seasons of high-end production. But I also like to see progress. I want to see them increasing their completion percentage, increasing their touchdown interception rate, their knowledge of their offense, working on their weaknesses, which would be a film thing, but still within stats. I mean, when they only have one season of production, sometimes that can kind of make defensive coordinators off balance, right? Because like, okay, we don't know who this kid is. When you have multiple years, and you see this in the NFL too, look at Lamar Jackson, defense is adjusted. Look at, even Mahomes. I know Mahomes is great, but Mahomes' first year starting was way better than any of his other seasons starting. And you can see that they have more of a plan, or they figure out what their tendencies are. And so when college quarterbacks can have multiple seasons and they build on that, I think that's a big bonus, because that means they're overcoming guys that are scheming against them.
I'm starting to understand your rankings a little bit more, Nick, now that you're saying all this, because I can feel it. I see it in there. Are you bigger on film, or are you analytics? Do you use both? They fight all the time, and we're not going to get into this fight on here, but do you kind of use both to help shape your process?
I'm basically a film guy. I don't ignore analytics because I think everything you use within context. I'm not going to ignore if a guy runs a running back and he runs a 4.9. I'd be like, oh wow, what's going on? But I should see that on film. So honestly, a lot of that stuff is just checks and balances for me. Like, hold on, did I see that right, or was that wrong? I might want to go back and look. But analytics has a part in the game. Film has a part in the game. If you think that one is only 100%, the other one is 0, then you're doing it wrong.
No, I agree. I'm more of a film guy. I do tend to watch more film. I'm trying to get better with analytics, but as a history teacher, math and me are not really the strongest suit in the world. I do struggle with that, but Dave Wright's trying to help me out the best he can. When you take notes, are you old school like me? Do you watch the whole game? I usually do hand. I do it by hand, paper. I don't actually type anything out. I'm old school. Is that kind of how you do it? What do you look for? Do you chart? What is your overall process there?
This is going to be funny. I'm going to show you right here. So today I'm charting for high school. This is where I'm going to show you. This is literally, it's just, I don't know, will it pick it up? Maybe not.
It picks it up a little bit. I can see it.
It's all handwritten.
Yeah.
That's how I chart my games. But that's a little bit different than, I think, evaluating players. So I used to do some of that stuff. And now what I do is I want to see repeatable traits. So if I see a quarterback or running back or receiver, anybody, if they do something 3 or more times, then that's who they are. So for instance, if David Tyree made that crazy catch on his helmet 3 to 5 times, that would change the whole outlook of how we look at him versus one time. Anybody can do something one time, but if they do it multiple times, then I'm taking that note. Now I might take that note already, and I like to type stuff out for prospects, and then I'll come back to be like, hold on, okay, when did this happen, and what games did this happen? But when I'm watching every play. I love slow motion. That's my favorite. I'm watching each play, I would say 3 to 5 times. And you do that for a couple of reasons. One, okay, what's the whole play? What's the offense trying to accomplish? What's the defense trying to accomplish? And a lot of times there's big plays and people are like, wow, look how great this guy is. It's a bad defensive play. The guy took a bad angle. There's an MA, which is a missed assignment. A guy fell down. It was a bad read. It was a bad decision. There's so many things that happen into a play that to me would factor. I love seeing really good plays against good defense. I'm like, okay, wow, that he out-repped that guy. And to me, that's more of a win than a guy that just blew a coverage and he's wide open for a touchdown. That doesn't mean a lot to me. Or there's a huge hole because the defensive end didn't fight the pressure and tried to run around. It got upfield. And there's a huge gap. Like those things, I think, matter. So that's why you watch it 3 to 5 times. And when you do that continually over time, you can speed it up. Maybe you only have to watch it 2 to 3 times. You get a better feel for film. But then you would take notes on those little things. And then if you see these little things over time, then that goes into the profile and your evaluation.
No, I think that's important. Yeah. And you could tell you put in the work for it and you see these things. I love the 3, if you see it 3 times, that's who they are. That makes a lot of sense, especially as someone who coaches and I see the same athlete do the same thing over and over. And it's hard to break it. That's kind of just at a certain point, by the time they're a senior, that's just who they are. And you have to adapt around them and you got a game plan around their deficiencies there. So just really quick, before we get into the top 5, when we're looking at, what is the most important to you? So I put a bunch down, like decision-making, making multiple reads, pocket presence. I put a bunch of them down. What are your top factors when you look at it for a quarterback?
One is how quickly they make decisions or their mental processing. That's number 1 by far. And you see that all the time. You see that within how they react to pressure, how they react to when coverages rotate, how they react to a blitz, whatever it is. That's huge because they have to process so much. Quarterbacking is so mental, and that's what makes it so hard to evaluate. It makes it so hard to figure out this guy is better than this guy because where some people get it wrong is they're like, hey, this guy's got a big arm. He's going to be a good quarterback. That's like 8th on my list.
Jamarcus Russell, guys.
Well, this is for the old school guys. How about Kyle Bowler? He could put his knee down on the 50 and throw it between the uprights. It's like you're never doing that in a game. That's part of why I have an issue with the combine. You're never going to have no pads on, no football, no defense. And part of it too is how quickly you make decisions, your confidence, and just reaction ability. All of that matters for any player on the field. And those are huge factors. You can be fast, but if you hesitate, now all of a sudden you're running a 4.6 instead of a 4.4. And that stuff is in those important things I think that you see on film. So quickly processing information. The other one is feet. Feet are huge. Feet are everything. When your feet are underneath you, you make good throws, you navigate the pocket, you are comfortable. There's a rhythm to being a quarterback. You make your play fake, you take your drop, and people don't know this, and I talk to my quarterbacks about this all the time, is I am so open to changing their drops based on who they are, how long it takes the receivers to run the route, and what the pass concept is.
Yeah.
It might be a quick 3-step drop. It might be a 3 and a hitch. It might be a long 3 and wait, then hitch. It might be a quick 5. All of it. You're doing all of this because think of when you're a basketball coach. Think about this. If your guy comes off a screen, catches the ball and shoots, better odds than he's sitting, catches it, sits, waits, and then shoots, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with quarterbacks. It's a rhythm thing. Take your drop, quick throw. And that's how, it's just like golfing. You want to be in this rhythm. And when you get out of that rhythm, it's not good. That's why a lot of quarterbacks struggle when they're off game script, right? So, or off their play script. So when the first read's not there, they got to go to 2 to 3, or they have to be creative. Only so many guys are creative. And so that's why the feet need to be there. So then you're on balance and everything's good.
Yeah, no, I think that's important too. I love that. One of my big things, I actually wrote this down. I always write down is how they play off script. So I'm glad you brought that up because there's only, like you said, there's only some that can really elevate their game. Like they're the Mahomes of the world. That guy plays off script. Probably, I would argue the best. Would you argue that he's probably the best off script quarterback?
Yep.
I mean, the dude almost threw a touchdown from his knees in the Super Bowl, which is like a 40-yard touchdown. But he can do those things and elevate it. And I think that's really hard for the younger guys. Like when I'm watching Zach Wilson, everybody says he can play off script. But how much can he do when he's playing against NFL level talent compared to what he did at BYU? And we'll get into that now. Let's get into it. So let's go through your top 5. And I love it because it's definitely going to be some fun going over these guys and where you guys have them and where you're looking at that. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the top 5 and kind of just work on through what we see and what we like. And I'll be asking questions from there. And if you have comments out there, you can ask him. Who is your number 5 rated quarterback in this class right now?
Number 5 for me is Trey Lance.
So he's got Trey Lance at 5, which hurts me, but let's go through it. So 6'4", 224, his college stats. He's had 1 year essentially, and then he played a scrimmage exhibition game. So he's at 208 for 318. His passing attempts, 2,900 yards, 30 touchdowns, 1 interception, including that scrimmage this last year. 192 attempts rushing, 1,300 yards rushing, 18 touchdowns. And he's currently in rookie ADP going QB3. So he has him ranked behind where he's going. And in startups, he's going as QB 20, so around 46. So around 4th round. So what do you see with Trey that maybe some others don't? Or maybe me, right? I have Trey ranked a little higher than this.
Yeah, so I mean, you just want to talk about overall. I mean, he's got good size. Looks a little skinny, but he plays strong, which is good. So when he runs the ball, he'll lower his shoulder. He's not afraid of a crowd. Which you might want him to not do that in the NFL, but if he get that yard, he can do that. That's a part of this scheme, though. With North Dakota State, I mean, they'll pull guards and they have designed quarterback runs. He's a strong arm kid. He can put it on a rope. I always call that a 2 ball. So 1 ball is just straight. A 3 ball's got a ton of arc, and that 2 ball is just a little bit of arc over the linebackers. It has to be on a line too, and he's got the arm to throw that deep out to the wide side, to the field if he needs to, or like a deep dig, things like that. In terms of athleticism overall, he's a good athlete. He's not a great athlete, but he's a good athlete. He's a better straight line athlete than he is anything else. Doing anything agility wise, making guys miss. Now, people say this and they'll like, but that one play, okay, yeah, he can do it. But again, I don't think it's who he is.
Okay.
So good athlete, not great. Surprising pocket presence for the athleticism. I don't think he has a natural feel for pressure. Also, he's a little static in the pocket. I would like there to be a little bit more life and movement in there. And then his accuracy to all levels is a big concern for me. In short passes, it would be, hey, it's a little behind, it's low, it's high. It doesn't have a good yak potential. That's behind the line of scrimmage on screens. I saw that multiple times. I saw that on short routes. And then down the field, the amount of times I see him hit a guy perfectly in stride are really low. He misses deep. When he does hit deep, a lot of times he puts a lot of loft and the underthrows the guys. And sometimes he underthrows them, then it's an incompletion. So that's big. When they're open, you got to hit them, Yeah. So that's another one. I see him struggling throwing into tight windows. And because sometimes that's a feel, when there's a defender on this side of me, you got to lead it to the other side. That's just something you got to know. Again, quick process that's going to change last second where you're going to release that. And I don't see him fitting those into tight windows well. I also didn't see him dealing with pressure great either. Now, again, not a ton of games or time, to figure all that out. Maybe he figured it all out in 2020. I don't know. But that scrimmage game was one of his worst games that I would say, in terms of he had pressure, didn't do great with it. He threw multiple balls that could have been picked in that game. In fact, the next one after that could have got picked that did get picked. So that's something. He's good play fakes. One thing people have to think about, they look at those numbers. He's got these great numbers. Easton Stick had almost identical numbers to him. Easton Stick had similar rushing touchdowns. They all had the same amount of passing touchdowns, by the way. Lance had more rushing yards, probably about like 400 or 500 per year, and was a little bit more efficient in terms of completion percentage. But Easton Stick was a 5th round pick. We're talking about a top 5, top 10 pick, and Easton Stick is nobody. So the reason I bring that up is to let you know North Dakota State is a powerhouse program, and this scheme helps with rushing and helps with guys pretty wide open. They have the best athletes on the field whenever they face an opponent. So just something to think on. So I don't think Trey Lance is bad. I wish I saw more in his game in the playoffs. they didn't rely on him to throw. He would throw between 10 and 15 passes a game. He averaged, I think it was 150 yards and 1 touchdown per playoff game. That was it. I mean, we talk about top 10 quarterback. You want a guy that, hey, when those crunch times on, they do that. Now he ran for quite a bit, but that's not what we're going to do in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I think all those things are fair. And I think that you have him at 5 because the other guys are more ready. I've always said that I think Lance, where my rating goes with him is I think that he does have a lot of upside as a quarterback. The biggest red flag I have in here, it's highlighted in red, is I feel like he struggles with his consistency with his mechanics. And kind of like how you talked about with footwork being one of those things that you really are impressed with and you want to see. I do think that he rushes it. He can rush it when he rolls oppo. So when he rolls opposite side, when he go into his left side, and he struggles with trying to get that prolonged release going. So he has a longer release than I like to see. It did look like it got better at his pro day. So I don't know if they've been working on kind of his mechanic. They've had time, right? So I think that they've had time to work on it. But I will say the consistency of the mechanics worries me a little bit. No, what you're saying is true. But do you think he needs to sit a year? Is that kind of your preference for him? Maybe drafted by somebody and sit?
I'd say at least a year, honestly. I mean, you're talking about the other parts of it. And again, there's more notes that I have. I mean, I think he processes a little slow. I think anticipating is another thing he needs to do. He just needs more confidence. And that's going to take some time. Hey, realize this is the concept. You got to throw this now. I mean, those are all things that could happen. People ask this all the time. Could they develop? Well, anybody could develop, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing is like, you know, you're hoping they develop this much, and we need to make sure they can't, you know, develop a ton. You know, that can be a whole new player. Yeah. I would think at least a year. Like if let's say he went to Atlanta, that's a great situation. Sit for 2 years, you develop completely. You know what I mean? You make sure you are super comfortable with that offense because Arthur Smith will be there, and then it's your job. You know, Matt Ryan leaves in 2 years. My comp for him, and again, when I say comps, everybody, it's just someone who he reminds me of, not career arc, not, you know, anything else. So just to give you an idea, so if you've never seen him play, hey, okay, he's kind of like this guy. He reminds me of Colin Kaepernick a lot.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a fair comp. I think that they kind of have the same profile. He played at a high school Turlock, which is really close to where I live right now. So I've seen that, and I watched Colin because I was growing up. I think that's a good comp. I like that comp. And I agree. And then with Colin, he kind of came into a good spot with San Francisco, and then you saw him kind of peter out because the defense is caught up. And like you mentioned, defense is kind of caught up. I would love Atlanta. I think that would be, I don't know if they're going to go that way, but I think that would be a good spot for him. I think I really worry about Lance is if he goes to an ownership or a team that just is not placated to having success. Like if he's going to, like the Lions drafted him, which I don't think they will, but that would hurt me in so many ways because that's just not a good franchise for him. He's got to go somewhere. What do you think of Denver?
I think Denver would rush him too much.
Yeah, because
they need a guy now.
Yeah. So I just don't. My whole spot was Carolina because I thought maybe Teddy, and then they kind of set into maybe they have Brady there, and now they got Darnold, which I like Darnold, but I think that kind of ruins Lance there. So I agree. I think that's an okay spot for him. You know, I think that if you're looking at upside and you think that he can make that jump, I don't mind you maybe taking a leap on him. But he's going as QB3. Is that a little too high for you in rookie drafts? Because he is technically, according to DLF's ADP.
Yeah, that's very high. And to me, part of this too is, I mean, I would say besides Trevor Lawrence, the other 4 I think are really tight in terms of rankings. Mm-hmm. And so what you're doing in between there is it's a tier. And you talked about like, hey, hand size, all this stuff. So also stats and injuries, like you're trying to mitigate risk. Mm-hmm. He has the most risk among those 4. So that's why he should be the last one for me.
Okay, no, that's fair. No, I appreciate it. No, we're not gonna no first take Stephen A. Smith over here. I think that's fair. As much as I think Lance, I would probably take him ahead of Mac, just because of the upside there, Konami code stuff. We'll get into Mac here in a minute. Not as soon as I thought. So who is your number 4? Who do you got at number 4 right here?
This is a recent development for me, by the way, with Mac Jones. So my number 4 is Justin Fields.
I love it because as a Michigan fan, all these Ohio State people are going to come out of here. But, you know, college stats, we know what he's done. 5,700 yards, 67 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He has that rushing upside. He's 4.4, 4.5, 40, 1,100 yards rushing, 19 touchdown. Right now he's going as QB2. So he's getting drafted as QB2, and in startups he's going as QB14. He's going pretty high in startups. I actually just recently saw him go as QB7. So he's definitely moving it up in startups, and he went in the middle of the second round in a startup that I'm in right now. So he's definitely gotten he's kind of fallen off a little bit. We'll talk about that, kind of the reputation of quarterbacks. But what is your overall thoughts of Justin Fields? Why do you have him at 4?
Well, first off, I didn't know you were a Michigan fan.
I am a Michigan fan. My grandpa bought me a Michigan helmet, and when I was a little baby, and I've been a Michigan fan. I'm a transplanted Michigan fan all the way over here in California.
Okay. I met Harbaugh.
Did you?
Yeah. So my one stint of college was at Western Kentucky. In 2002. We won the national championship. I wasn't there. I got there in 2005, so not that long later. Jack Harbaugh was the head coach then.
Oh, yeah.
And so Jim came and visited when I was there at one point. Again, so I'm a Bears fan growing up, and Jim Harbaugh was there, and I'm just intimidated. At this point, so he was head coach at San Diego. Then he became head coach at Stanford, and this was right when he got called at Stanford. And he was talking to some guys, whatever, and I was in my coordinator's office. He's like, "You go talk to Jim." Yeah, I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh, come on," So I'm nervous. I'm a kid. So he takes me out there. I get to meet him. He's got his big Stanford sweater on with the big S on. He's just, he's just a cool guy. Chatted for our 20 minutes, whatever. But then I coached with Willie Taggart, who's now at where's he at now? Central Florida. No, he's at Florida Atlantic. But he took Willie to Stanford when they're out there doing well. So so I get to meet Jack and Jim. So
that's awesome. If you meet him again, can you tell him to start putting an offensive system in here? Because I'm struggling right now as a Michigan fan. We got to beat Ohio State this century. It's killing me.
Gosh, they had so much talent, didn't really do a whole well. But speaking of Ohio State here, the thing is people are going to see me at 4 and like I'm hating it. Like I said, again, these guys are all really close.
Yeah.
I like Justin Fields. I've always liked Justin Fields. So this isn't a slight to him at all. You're talking about a guy that's got good arm strength. We talked earlier about making that wide side of the field throw. So people don't really know that. So there's hash marks. The ball can be lined up either side. When it's on one hash mark, that's a really long throw to throw it out. And he can do that. So I'm do that again 3 or more times. So I'm putting down, hey, that is something that who he is. In terms of, he's a good athlete, as we know. All I see now anymore in Justin Fields, it's not a throw. It's him running down the field and blocking for Trey Sermon. I mean, it's one play, everybody. But I don't think he plays to his speed that often. I would like to actually see him run harder when he runs. Because sometimes I think he's just running to get a few yards and kind of get down. But hey, man, that's a weapon. You can run the 4.4s. Let's go get some. He climbs the pocket well. I mean, he's a good athlete. You see him sometimes. He's strong enough to break tackles back there. But one of my issues with him is when he climbs the pocket. You talked about the Kyler Murray. There's Russell Wilson. There's some of these smaller quarterbacks. So when you have your pocket, you have a couple of choices. You can go left, right, forward, or back. They go back a lot of times to buy time, and you'll see they get these huge sacks. Fields climbs the pocket, which is what a lot of quarterbacks do. His problem is when he climbs the pocket, sometimes he gets too close to those interior offensive linemen, and then that affects his throw. That affects if he's on balance. He has to be on his back foot. He gets a lot of tipped passes at the line of scrimmage, and it's just unnecessary sometimes where he'll scramble into pressure, or he'll step up into pressure. I think he makes some poor decisions sometimes under pressure, like he freaks out and he'll throw a pick or into tight coverage. I would just like him, and some of that I think is inconsistent processing. I don't think he's a slow processor. I've seen him make multiple reads, whatever reports you want to hear. I'm not concerned about that. Most quarterbacks throw off their first read anyway. Like, it's not a big deal. And what's also interesting too is, we talked about this creativity, talking about, Patrick Mahomes and, I think Aaron Rodgers is creative at times. There's always preferences for quarterbacks. Justin Fields loves throwing the middle of the field, and he likes taking shots too.
Yeah.
So I think he throws well to middle of the field. Digs, he'll sometimes I think he might wait in the pocket too long and gets sacked because he's trying to wait for things to develop, which I think is okay at times. He resets his feet well. So what that is, if he's looking in the middle of the field, his feet are this way, and then he has to look over here, he'll reset his feet. So that way he's online. Obviously he's a quick and fast athlete, as we know. Yeah. I just wanted to see a little bit more of his game. When you watch more and more games of players, I mean, like you watch the Northwestern game, that was his worst game. Man, he looked awful. Like he is a little streaky of just like really bad plays. You have to overcome that with some resiliency. He'll have some stretches of some really good games too. But I just wanted to see a little bit more.
Yeah, and that Northwestern game, I've watched it a couple of times because I'm back and forth on fields. And when you watched him play that game, when I was watching film on him, it seemed like he shrank away from the moment. Like it looked like he was figuring out, okay, this isn't working. He didn't really adapt very well. And I thought he got better towards the end, but it did look like he kind of shrank away from that. I've seen that with athletes. You've definitely had, because you've taught it, you've coached them too. And it's weird because I get worried because coaches always talk about having it. And what we mean by that is like when it comes down in the game time, who do you rely on? And sometimes that's not your best player. Like for me as a coach, hey, I know I can go to this kid when the game's on the line. Now, my best player, sometimes I can't go to him. So I think, and it's kind of hard to quantify there, but I think with Fields, I worry about that after seeing that Northwestern game. That's the one thing I saw out there is like, hey, does he want that ball? Does he want to go, and can he make those decisions? I love his footwork, though. That's like you talked about. I think that is a really big area of his game. I do want to ask you, because I think that this is an important question for you being around the game for so long, and I've watched these prospects go too. Right now, there's a thing about Fields that people are saying that they're unfair narrative and scouting process for quarterbacks that are African-American. And we've seen this. I think that this can be real, like, and in some aspects of the game. What is your feelings on it?
I think it used to be really, really bad. Honestly, you want to think of some of the guys that had to break through a long time ago. You think of Doug Williams, think of Warren Moon, who couldn't play right away, but man, how talented was Warren Moon, Randall Cunningham? I mean, there were some super, super talented guys that didn't get as much probably recruiting or looks back in the day. I think Doug Williams had to go to Grambling. I mean, like, he went Super Bowl MVP. It's just it's ridiculous. I think I would hope it's better because we have some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL are minorities. Just to me, I'm so selfish. I want to win, so I just always play the best guy. I mean, I've been around people from different states, different cultures, just different countries, even which I think was the best part of my coaching development, was just getting to know so many different kinds of people. But I mean, there's people that work hard from every background, and there's people that are lazy from every background. So I think the more, and I hope the more we kind of go through time here, and these good old boys will just go away, and we can just evaluate the best players and by who they are. Honestly, it's sad. I don't see that stuff from Fields, and I know there's people that come out and they don't see that stuff. I evaluate a player for a player, and I think he's a really good player too. Yeah,
I do too. I think you're going towards the same thing I was thinking of. Like some of these old guard, good old boy scouts that are still there, they're used to that, where they're going to use race as kind of like, and it's unfair. But hopefully what we start seeing is these new kind of guys. Hey, I just want to win. This is the best player. Let's look at this guy from this perspective. So I agree. I don't see what they see in Fields. I think he's a gamer. I've watched him play at Ohio State against Michigan. I've seen what he can do on the field.
That's the knee injury, right? That's one of the things that I loved about him. He had that knee, right? It was 2019? Has the knee injury. Comes back. He had
I thought we were going to win, Nick. I thought we were going to win.
I did too. And then so he has this knee injury, and you correct me if I'm wrong. This is just from memory. He has this play where he has to scramble out. I'm like, okay, he's moving on that knee. Then he throws a dime in the end zone to Olave, which again, that's creativity, athleticism, making multiple reads. I'm like, he's a good player. I don't get it.
Yeah. Let's move on from that, because that brings back bad memories. I thought that was going to be our one win, but no, I agree. I think he does play off script. I think he does do those things. Is there a landing spot that, like, do you think he gets drafted by the Niners? Do you think they go that route, or are we going to see him kind of fall?
No, I don't think he's going to go to the Niners. You talked about Denver. I think that's a great spot for him. And also, if he's there for Carolina, I don't. Do they pass on him? And again, sorry, I'm not a Sam Darnold fan, so I'd rather have Justin Fields than Sam Darnold. So, I think that's a spot
Yeah.
as well. He's more prepared to play right away than Trey Lance is, and so I think Denver could be that spot, and that's great because I love a lot of the talent that they have there, especially Vic Fangio getting Kyle Fuller from my Bears. Their defense is getting better.
Yeah.
I think that would be a fantastic landing spot.
Well, maybe your Bears get a quarterback. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's go to
I'll take Fields.
Let's go to number 3. Who is your number 3 out here?
Yes, this is a new thing for me. Mac Jones.
Look at this. Mac Jones. Hey, he had a hell of a college career. 413 out of 556 passing, 6,000 yards, 56 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Right now he's going as QB5 though in a super flex rookie draft. So it could be a value if you kind of rank him like Nick does. And in startups, he's going as QB24, which is a lot lower than I expected. He's going behind I think it was Darnold's going a little higher than him, some other guys. So why did you move him up? This is a recent thing. I'd love to hear what your opinion is on Mac.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of it is having spring break. I have more time to watch games and film stuff, and the more I watch, the more I like. And and one of the things I think that I think I put in Twitter today was just a lot of times people just want to be right, and I think we need to work about being correct. And just the more information that we get and we receive should change our outlook. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, I've probably watched 5 games of Mac Jones. Is he perfect? No. Does he have the razor, the rocket laser arm, whatever for Josh Allen? No. Or Mahomes? No. But he does everything else so well. Oh, yeah. He has really good feet. He always has a good, and again, Bama runs those RPOs and those quick passes. But his feet are really good. Quick release. He processes information really well, I think, in terms of reading who's open, who's not. Even with pressure, I think he's fine with that. Again, like I said, I like his platform.
Yeah,
I think he moves well in the pocket too. That's the one thing you're like, man, because he's the worst athlete of these of these 5 by far. Zach Wilson's a better athlete than people want to recognize too, but Mac Jones is not.
Mac Jones looks like me, Nick. He's a little dad bod-ish. He can't move though in that pocket a little bit, but he's got some dad bod-ish issues going on.
Yeah. He's like. I don't know who, like Kirk Cousins trying to run or something like that.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah. But one of the things too I like is that he knows where his outlet receiver is. So a big part of me as a coordinator is I always want to stay ahead of the chain. So if you can't get your initial read, you check down to Najee Harris and he gets you 4 yards. Now it's 2nd and 6 instead of 2nd and 10. That's big. That opens up the whole playbook. Average arm strength. I don't think it's bad arm strength. People talk about arm strength too. Arm strength isn't how deep you throw the ball. Arm strength is throwing something on a line.
Yeah.
And in terms of the NFL, in ADOT, they're not throwing 30 yards out of the field that often, So I think that's fine. I think he throws a really catchable ball, which I think is really important too. And I like his accuracy of leading for more yak. There's just a lot to his game that I like. He seemed always in control. Now, again, did he have stretches of some bad plays? Sure. Yeah. That's why the gap between him and Fields is probably equal, honestly. Lance is further down for me. But I still have the other 2 guys higher. So these 2 I think would be pretty much equal. And really it's a horse apiece. It's who you like in terms of, I would think Fields probably has a higher ceiling. I don't think Jones has a low ceiling though. That's the thing is people, I think they have this thing of arm strength being the king here. Yeah. And why don't you go look at Tom Brady's arm strength?
Yeah.
Look at Gardner Minshew's arm strength. And they got it done. Fitzpatrick, he's been around forever. Teams just keep trying to get rid of him and he doesn't have a crazy strong arm. He gets it done.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And if we're talking about quarterbacks who are still in the league, Jared Goff's still in the league. Look at these other guys that have played. Even like Daniel Jones, I would argue maybe Mac would be a better option than Daniel Jones at this point. And what I like about Mac, he anticipates his receivers' routes really well, and he gives that yak ability for them. And yes, he had good athletes, but you can't just say, oh, he had good athletes. Like Mac did lead to those guys having a pretty good year. Devonta Smith winning the Heisman. Waddle would have been great if he wouldn't have got hurt. Mechie's there. All those guys, a lot of that was Mac. Like, we can't just say, oh, he had great athletes. Tua had the same, even better athletes, I would argue, with Judy and Ruggs and those guys there. So I like Mac. Do you think San Francisco takes Mac? Is that kind of your mindset?
Yeah. No, I do. And I'd argue that, Mac had less options than some. And when you want to look at some of these teams throwing to guys that are wide open, I don't think Mac had as many guys wide open as some of these other schemes did too. Now, I will say this for my rankings. My rankings are based on NFL outcome, not fantasy. So if we were to say fantasy here and you were to add in all those rushing yards, I probably would flip Fields and Mac.
That's fair. I mean, when we're looking at this, I think they're very close, like you said. And it just kind of depends. If Fields goes to Denver for fantasy purposes, I might be like, hey, I mean, San Francisco's pretty nice, but their scheme is a little bit, the run first, kind of going to be doing that scheme there that you could see. So I think Fields would have more of a fantasy impact if he went to the Broncos. But no, I think those are fair observations, especially for Mac. I like Mac. It's weird. I started off the season. The one thing I did after his first game, I think it was against Ole Miss or one of the Texas A&M, I did a breakdown of him and I said, not very athletic. His arm strength kind of worries me. But then as we went, he does anticipate throws well. So like, he's probably been the biggest riser for me, and I'm nobody. But it's just somebody that I was like, at the beginning, I was like, I didn't really see it. And I had to get that false narrative out of my head that it was just a Bama quarterback and kind of, Tua did it. He had weapons. And when I really looked at his tape and just tried to get all the biases out there, I'm actually starting to fall in love with Mac Jones a little bit. I have the 9th pick in a 16-team Superflex, and I really want him to fall to me because I think he might. And so that's kind of my mindset. If he's in that 8 to 10 range, he's a hell of a value. And that's kind of where he's going right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, one thing I forgot to say, and this is back to Fields, I hope that's okay, is I like painting the picture of a comp. So I have 2 comps for Justin Fields. And one is Dak Prescott, and the other one is Justin Herbert. I think those remind me more of his game than any other quarterbacks right now.
No, you're talking to the Dak guy right here. So I would agree. I like that with Fields. Do you have a comp for Mac, or are we just going to throw out, not Kyle Bowler? Let's not throw out Kyle Bowler. Do you have anybody that kind of reminds you of Mac Jones?
I think Kirk Cousins makes the most sense to me. In terms of, I think the same platform, quick processor, average arm. I know we have the primetime game Kirk thing going on, but I think Mac Jones showed up in the primetime is enough that we can get rid of that part.
Yeah, Kirk never really showed up in primetime. Trust me, I watched him play. He always choked in primetime. All right, let's go to your number 2 then.
Zach Wilson.
Man, this guy, BYU kid, California kid too. I got to give him a shout out. 7,600 yards at BYU, 56 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. He's a sneaky athlete, kind of like Nick had talked about a little earlier. 642 yards, 15 rushing touchdowns. Right now, he's going as QB4, but I have a feeling that's going to get a little raised as we get closer to the draft. And his Superflex startup right now is 35, is QB17. So he's actually still a pretty good value. And we have some, like Felix Sharp is always, he's been on the Wilson train for a lot longer than me. I've liked him a lot. What is the most impressive thing about his game to you?
Confidence. You can just tell when he plays, he's a confident kid, and he kind of came out of nowhere, and that's why he's a little bit late, maybe to rising here. Same with Mac Jones. I mean, as opposed to like Fields and Lance, people have been hyping them up for a longer time. Interesting. I was just talking to Felix about Zach Wilson, and my comp and his comp are similar. So I'll just start with that, and we can kind of describe the game. My comp for him is Russell Wilson, and he doesn't have the top end athleticism, but you don't want to take just the other part and down because of how he's in the pocket. He's a very creative player in terms of he has really good pocket presence, really good feet in the pocket, always active, always moving to find lanes and to avoid rush. I do think he can try and do too much at times and get sacked.
Yeah.
I think that in terms of reading, he anticipates really well, but I think sometimes he tries to make it's probably like me when I play golf. I always want to make like the hero shot, and I'm like, I probably should take like the safe one.
Yeah.
I would like Zach Wilson to make more safe throws instead of the harder ones. But he has, I would say good general accuracy. There's times I think he could be a little bit better, but I think he's smart when he's throwing into traffic or in the end zone. And there's a couple guys he'll throw low, which is smart. He'll change his arm angles, which reminds us of some
Yes.
guys, Matt Stafford, etc. Again, creative. I think he processes quickly. Like he'll go from 1 to 2 to 3. Like he knows that, and they talk about like, so what happened? Why is he good now? I was on a podcast earlier this morning. Izzy Alcafas, Dynasty Trade Calculator, asked me. He's like, well, he came out of nowhere, and his other seasons weren't good. I'm like, well, so were Joe Burrow's,
Yeah.
And part of it is he had a shoulder injury. He's healthy from that now. Had a thumb injury. He's healthy from that now. And they said during quarantine, he just studied a bunch. And you can tell think of it, when you're going to take any kind of a test or any kind of anything, when you are very confident up here, you play faster, and he plays much faster this time. So, I think he has a good, not great arm, but all those other small intangible things give me more confidence. Now, again, really low competition that he played against. I think some of the schemes and things were advantageous, but when he throws up some balls, it's when the defenders aren't looking, which that's smart too. You want to throw when the other guys can't see the ball. So it's not a 50-50 ball. Then maybe it's a 70-30 ball.
I like Wilson. I like what you're saying there. I love the comp, because I think that he does have that kind of same, and Wilson in a way is kind of a playmaker, kind of a risky quarterback too. When he makes those throws, sometimes he changes his angles. He's done that last season. Everybody's like, oh, I didn't know he could do it. Yes, he can. He's been like that since he played Wisconsin. And Wilson does that too. I actually love the Jets fit, because I think that this year, now that Gase and all those guys are gone, if he goes to the Jets, he has Mims. Corey Davis is kind of whatever to me, but he'll be there. I like Corey, but let's stop. We're playing Corey up a little bit too much man,
he's my guy. He's been my guy for so long.
You think he's gonna be wide receiver 1 on that team? Little aside, because I seen that. You do?
Yeah. I like Mims. Mims was my wide receiver 4 before the draft last year. But I think Corey has just great ability that people downplay.
I'm a Chris Herndon stan too. So, hey, let's go, baby. This is our year, Chris Herndon people out there. I think he fits really well. They get a running back in there. I love what he can do there. I love his moxie, like you talked about. I think that he has that. And people do forget that he basically had to have restructured shoulder surgery. So he's coming back, and he really had to struggle and come back with that injury that he had. And he got better. And everybody uses the Coastal Carolina game as I don't want to say a knock, but if you really watch that tape, he should have had a 75-yard touchdown that basically got called back. It was dropped. And then he would have had better stats in that game. They probably should have won that game had it not gone a couple ways for calls. So, they really realistically could have went undefeated. I know that they didn't play the greatest talent in the world, but he has something. He's got that it factor, and I like what he has. I'm pretty sure he's going to. And I like that. And now, as far as his ADP, he's going as QB4, so he is still a value out there. I just took him in a mock as my QB2. Is that where you'd comfortably take him?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, what's interesting? People bring up competition for him. Will they bring up for Trey Lance?
No, they don't usually say that. They just say upside. They say upside.
And it's like that competition is so much less for Trey Lance.
Yeah, people don't really understand how big of a difference that is. Like, 2A. And I was like, yeah, it's
well, and how much better. I mean, North Dakota State is the Alabama on steroids of FCS. They've won 8 of 9 national titles or 7 of 8. Like, it's something ridiculous. And I remember their receivers are always open. Their offensive lineman gives them great protection. It's just like, do you realize what they have right now?
Yeah, no, they're insane. My poor Sacramento State Hornets don't have a shot over there. But when you're looking at these other areas, I think it's important. I love Zach. I think that he's definitely rising up. And as a QB 17 in Superflex startups, I would be comfortable taking him as my QB1 if I'm going to go young and kind of in the 3rd, 4th round on at the turn. I'll take Wilson and just kind of ride with him. I have more faith in that and taking Lawrence, who's going Lance, who's going 3 picks later, or 3 basically QBs later. I'd kind of be more concerned with having him as my QB2-ish. So I like that. So, all right, let's talk about Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, he's there. I know there's some hot takes out there saying right now that he's not the QB1. So I guess we could talk about that. In college, what else could you see about this guy? I actually watched him destroy Alabama as a freshman in the national title game. I went to that game. He had 10,000 yards, 90 touchdowns, 17 receptions. He's a sneaky athlete too. I know we say that about white quarterbacks, but he is actually a pretty good athlete. 943 yards, 18 touchdowns rushing. He's QB1 right now. He is going as QB7 in Superflex startups. So he's going pretty early because of the quarterback situation in the NFL. have you faltered? Have you kind of swayed at all about Lawrence, or is he been your QB1? He's your QB1 for the last however many years.
He's been my QB1. I was down on him a little bit more and having him in Fields really close, and then the gaps just widened again because, again, we talked about sample size. He's done it for so long.
Yeah.
Is he a perfect prospect? No, he's not. He can stare down his reads. He can throw picks. He can lead defenders into windows. There's times he tries to do a little bit too much, but he's a quick decision maker. He's got great base and feet in the pocket. People will say he reminds of a Peyton Manning. That's why. It's because of his base. He's always resetting, and he's this big guy back there. He's accurate. He can make all the throws. And what I like a lot about him is his deep ball is a really catchable deep ball. Russell Wilson has this huge arc, and that's why they catch him a lot. And Lawrence has a way better arm, but his are really catchable, which I like. Underrated runner. I mean, people, you talked about sneaky athlete, which whatever. He's a good athlete.
Yeah, he is.
But what I like, he's a strong runner. He makes good cuts. He'll cut inside. He'll probably take too many hits, but he reads his blockers and defenders' angles well, I think, as a runner. I think he makes fairly good decisions under pressure as well, in terms of he knows where his outlets are. He knows where he can kind of bail out a ball and give a guy a one-on-one shot. And the other thing too is, like, this last year, he was out a little bit with COVID and whatnot, but he was without Justin Ross the last 2 years, Frank Latson, and I'm trying to think of the other guy,
Joe Nagata.
They both basically were nothing. I mean, those are the top three receivers, and so they were without all three of those guys, and they still are a pretty good team. So you think if you have those three guys, that's a way different, I think, outcome.
And realistically, he probably got Amari Rodgers drafted because of what Amari's been able to do. Because Amari was, I hope people listening to this understand, Amari was never even looked at as being the guy at all. Even last year, before those injuries, people thought he was going to be like their wide receiver 3 or 4. And I'm a big Joe Nagata guy, so I think that this may be his year. But I think Lawrence, to me, he's the 101. I don't know how you really can argue differently. I know that prospect fatigue is a real thing. So we've been seeing him do it. I saw him pick apart Alabama as a freshman in person, and I could not believe what I was watching. It was one of those, like, wow, this is happening. Like, and I got tickets from Alabama fans, so I was in a section with just Alabama people, and I really had no rooting interest. I was just there to see the game, and I just could tell that he destroyed their hearts. He ripped their hearts out, and I was like, man, this kid's got it. Like, this kid just straight up took Saban as a freshman, true freshman, and said, oh, no, it's my team now. This is my college football. And that stuck with me. I'm not going to falter that. I think that he's going to come in. I love him in Jacksonville. I think that he's got weapons there. I think that he's kind of one of those prospects. He's not going to get hurt anywhere he goes. I expect him to be there. You have anything left on Lawrence before I ask you a couple little quick questions?
No. I think he's a very good prospect. I think he might be a little overrated in terms of people think he's like the second coming of whatever. There are outcomes where he might not reach that potential, but I think he's the safest bet of any of these quarterbacks. He's really good. Yeah,
he was one of the best high school quarterbacks we've ever seen in Georgia. He was one of the best prospects to come out of there. Really quick, yeah, go ahead.
My comp for him, 2020 Josh Allen is my comp for him.
Oh, wow. Look at that. That's pretty high praise for them. I love Josh Allen. What was your opinion of Josh when he was coming out? Because he's a local kid over here. So I got to see him. I saw his brother play basketball here. So what was your opinion of him coming out?
He was my QB too. I think I was on an island. Me and a couple of guys were Olympia on the island when everyone was making fun of his accuracy in training camp and preseason games and trying to make fun of him. And guess who's laughing now? I didn't see. I mean, his completion percentage was lower because he didn't dink and dunk or drop off when he needed to. He just tried to keep winning and taking shots.
Yeah.
And when you change that decision making, a lot of things are better. Yes, he improved accuracy and a lot of things along the way, but I liked a lot of the things that he could do. He was a little bit of a higher ceiling, lower floor type of a guy, but people just ripped him apart for small things, and they just stayed on that. And I'm like, do you not see how he can run, how creative he is? We talked about creative arm angles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The throws that he can make. A lot of those other small things that he could do. Toughness. He took so many hits at Wyoming, and he would not go out of the game. I'm like, that kid wants it.
Yeah. And then just coming from, he was so upset he didn't get offered by Fresno State because he grew up in Fireball, which is like 20 minutes away from me. He went to junior college and he worked and he got a lot better. And I love those small town kids because they get that chip. And he's always had that chip. And he went to Wyoming, then he had that chip. He went to Buffalo. Everybody kind of said it. So that's a good comp for him. I like that. And this is why we have you on, because you know what you're talking about. If he was your QB2, you obviously understand quarterbacks. We won't go through any of your misses. You never miss. That's just how we do it here. Now let's go really quick. I just want to ask you one question because I know we're running out of time. But is there any quarterback that's outside this top 5 that you think maybe have a shot, the chance, like that maybe I won't say is like a perennial all-star, like a Pro Bowl player, but maybe someone that could maybe fill a role? I know Trask used to be called the future Joe Burrow, and that was funny. Kellen Mond, I'm not a big Kellen Mond guy, so I don't think he has the accuracy. Is there any guys outside there that you think has a chance?
I think Trask is maybe the guy. Those are my next two. Those two, you go on the Davis Mills route if you wanted to. I don't like him as much as those other two. So, I mean, Trask just is what he is. He's a if it's within the play script, the one or two quick decisions when you want him to go down the field, when he's got to deal with pressure and got to use his athleticism, which doesn't have as much of, it's tougher for him. But he's basically a Mason Rudolph type to me.
Oh, Mason. That's a Mason Rudolph. Yeah, I mean, I thought you were going to say Sam Ehlinger. No Sam Ehlinger love out here? I'm just kidding. All right, so, hey, Nick, I appreciate you coming on. I really do. And so just to recap for everybody out there, Trey Lance is 5, Justin Fields 4, Mac Jones is 3, Zach Wilson is 2, and Lawrence is 1. And this is his pro NFL rankings, not necessarily fantasy. And he's got Justin Fields and Mac Jones very close. So don't come after him on Twitter. Don't be yelling at us on social media. That's kind of where he has his rankings at. Why don't you tell us where you can be found? Or I put up his at name for Twitter. You've definitely follow him. He's one of the good ones out there. And maybe some work you have coming down here, or if you're just going to be enjoying the draft.
Yeah. So @_Nick Whalen. I do Dynasty film nerds. So Dynasty Nerds, we have this YouTube channel. We'll be doing some prospect takes just like this, but we'll be watching film. I'm on DTC on their podcast. And that's it. I mean, I used to do a lot of reports and things like that. I'm not doing that this year. I'll just be enjoying it. If people want one-on-one consulting, I'll do that. Just reach out to me. But other than that, I'm just going to kind of put up my feet and enjoy it for a year.
Hey, man, we all deserve a little break and just to enjoy the draft and the football. And I wish you the best with coaching. Finish out that season strong. And I really appreciate you coming on. So everybody out there, if you were listening to the podcast, we appreciate you guys. Our numbers have gone up a lot. I really, really appreciate everything that you guys do for us. Make sure you rate and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button for us, please, and subscribe there. And we appreciate you, Nick, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, you too.
Did you get all that? If not, make sure you head over to hammercast.com, subscribe, and join the Hammer Nation. Until next time, keep grinding.